Kyle, hello and welcome to Washington Online. Kyle, was the killing of al-Zawahiri a part of a coherent strategy, U.S. strategy to continue with countering terrorism and especially Al-Qaeda, or it was just an opportunity? He was found and he was targeted and killed.
Well, I think it definitely does not represent any larger American counterterrorism strategy. Frankly, the United States has not had a coherent counterterrorism strategy in really the 20 years that we've been fighting the war on terror. So it would surprise me if they're starting now. That said, Zawahiri mattered. His death is obviously a positive event. In the past year, he has produced more Al Qaeda propaganda and content than he has in many years. He was a profoundly serious strategist. He pioneered Al Qaeda's efforts of blending in and trying to appear as merely local outfits around the globe. That strategy had very major successes early in the Arab Spring, where Al Qaeda affiliates in Syria and Libya played leading roles. And it really was only undone due to the collapse of popular support for Islamist parties in the region and due to the defection of Al Qaeda in Iraq, which became the Islamic State. But Zawahiri almost led Al Qaeda to its goal. So I think we have to take him. We have to take him very seriously, and the role that he played in Al Qaeda very seriously.
Yes, you mentioned that his propaganda helped Al Qaeda cells and Al Qaeda groups in countries like Syria and Iraq. Today, if we look at Syria, the U.S. military is stationed until today in northeast Syria, combating ISIS, ensuring the defeat of ISIS, as the Pentagon described the mission in northeast Syria. But also, there is Al Qaeda in northwest Syria. Many people would accuse Turkey today, its operations in northern Syria, to be counting on those Al Qaeda cells, because also a couple of ISIS leaders were found in Al Qaeda controlled areas in Syria, in northwest Syria, and these areas are just a couple of kilometers far from the Turkish army. Um, is Al Qaeda in Syria, is Turkey's use for like minded groups something that concerns the US today?
I don't think it concerns them as much as it ought to. And here we really see the brilliance of Zawahiri's strategy because by changing the names and not admitting the connection of some of these groups to Al Qaeda, he was able to get support for actions of the Syrian rebels that otherwise they would not have gotten. I mean, you had here in the United States, you had terrorism analysts urging us to cooperate with Al Qaeda linked militias during the height of the Syrian civil war. And they were just not taking seriously the reality that these groups were tied to Al Qaeda. Now, I think Turkey knows better, and they just don't care, or in fact, they see it as a positive. But absolutely, I mean, the Americans and really the rest of the West took their eyes off Al Qaeda. They focused solely on Islamic State. They didn't take Al Qaeda seriously in Syria or elsewhere. And I think we will continue to see the cost of that in the future.
Yes, we know that during his latest visit to the Middle East, President Biden assured the allies that the U.S. is not leaving the Middle East, is not leaving the region. But if we look today at what's happening in Syria, which is neighboring countries that we care about, like Jordan and Israel, we see a lot of chaos taking place in Syria. The U.S. is not having until today any strategy for a political solution in Syria. Do you think having some troops in northeast Syria is enough to ensure that Syria won't again be a source for new terrorist organizations? Because, as we know, ISIS was created in Syria and Iraq, in that area on the borders. Do you think the US is doing enough to ensure the stability of that region?
No, I don't think so. I don't think care all that much, really, about the stability of that region, as long as the American people's attention is not on it, as long as events in that region are not directly related to American casualties, as long as there is no major outcry or event that draws American attention, as, for example, ISIS's attack on the Yazidis and the Kurds did, then the Americans just aren't that concerned about it. They're not interested in it, and that's to be expected. More concerning, I think, has been the Biden administration's really negative relationship with the Israelis, but also with the Saudis, with the Emiratis. They have not really done a good job building up any kind of replacement for the United States in the region. I mean, I think it's okay if the Americans don't want to take the lead in the Middle East, but if they don't, they have to be pretty serious about deciding who will take the lead. And when you have a Biden administration that is absolutely committed to doing nothing that interferes with a new Iran deal, when you have a Biden administration that continues to spurn the Saudi-American relationship, the Israeli-American relationship, and other relationships in the region, you're going to get whatever you get. And in all likelihood, that's probably going to be a little bit of chaos. If we want out of the region, we have to think seriously about who we want to replace us to keep the peace. And so far, I haven't seen any evidence that they're prepared to do that.
Yes, today on the ground in Syria, Turkey is taking big part of the lead beside Russia. Also, Iran has big footprint on the ground in Syria. All these players are not doing what's in the interest of the U.S. Maybe Turkey is the closest to the U.S. and to the NATO, but they are closer to Russia and Iran today when it comes to Syria. They are preparing for a new military attacks against the Kurds in northern Syria. Do you think this expanding Turkish influence in northern Syria should concern the U.S. when it comes to the expansion of Islamist groups' influence in the region?
Well, I think it certainly should concern the Americans, but I don't know that it will. There was actually, prior to the Ukraine war, there was a beginning of what seemed like pressure on Turkey from certain quarters in the United States. People were increasingly pointing out Turkish ties to various jihadist militias in northern Syria and some of the bad behavior that the Erdogan regime was perpetrating. They're playing with relationships with the Russians. But now that we have the Ukraine situation, Turkey has taken a major role. We saw recently their involvement with this Ukraine grain shipment deal. And so the Turks have played their hand very well, making themselves appear indispensable to all sides in the region. And so I don't think the United States is really going to take seriously some of the Turkish bad behavior in northern Syria when they have other things on their mind that the Turkish government is more involved in. So, should they pay attention to it? Yes. Do I think they will? Probably not.
Do you think the mainstream thinking here in Washington, D.C., from both parties um, has the same concerns you have, understand the threat that Turkey's expansion in Syria is posing to the U.S. interests when it comes to the influence of Islamists that Turkey is counting on, and also sent to Libya, sent to other places to fight. Because if we look at what happened a few years ago when President Trump was in charge, he was accused of giving a green light to Turkey to invade new areas from northeast Syria. And today also, as you mentioned, under President Biden, and with what's happening in Ukraine, and because everybody wants the unity of the NATO, Turkey is being given another green light to do whatever they want in Syria.
I mean, yeah, we saw how Turkey was able to use its influence in NATO when it came to the question of Sweden and Finland entering NATO. So, as I said, Turkey has played its cards very, very well. I don't see the kind of pressure on Turkey to change its behavior here in Washington that I would like to see. There have been some voices criticizing Turkey. And as I said, that was really starting to increase, and I thought maybe we were getting somewhere. But then with the Ukraine situation, a lot of that has been quieted down. It's certainly possible, of course, that events may change things. If something in the Turkish operation in northern Syria really goes astray, if there's video, of really bad behavior or civilians being harmed, those kinds of things can change the conversation in Washington very quickly. But absent such a thing as that, just Americans' eyes are not on the ball when it comes to this region. We're really just not focused on it.
Thank you so much, Kyle.
Thank you.